Hey everyone, Dan here again with a little bit of an intro. This is my second video. Obviously the quality is not great, but this was another one that I did just on the cuff. For a little bit of fun, so please enjoy. And yeah, some things have changed since I made it. But hopefully, we can just keep on smiling.
Does the kangaroo even talk in this movie? I mean, other than a dream sequence, kind of some kind of film they sold to kids here.
Howdy ho, people. I've got some people in my family who have or have lived in Australia. I got a cousin of those over there. I have a half sister who did live in Australia, although she moved recently. The reason I bring this up is because I think that the actual peak of Australian set cinema is the 2003 film Kangaroo Jack, directed by David McNally and produced by Jerry Bruckheimer. Follows the adventures of Charlie Gabon and Lewis Booker, played by Jerry O'Connell and Anthony Anderson, the second movie of his I covered after Agent Cody Banks 2 Destination London. Two friends who met when they were younger after Lewis saved Charlie from drowning after his would-be mobster stepdad nearly tried to kill him. The stepdad, by the way, is played by Christopher Walken. Decades later, Charlie and Lewis are all grown up and are given order to travel to Australia to deliver a package to Mr. Smith. So along the way, they encounter plenty of troubles as they traverse the land down under. I remember Kangaroo Jack as a kid. I remember the poster. I remember seeing the trailer in the cinema. And being me, young squat and all, it really piqued my interest and I wanted to see it. The movie was sold to kids. They did all the classic advertisements then. Commercials in Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and advertisements in family-friendly magazines. I didn't see it in the cinemas, unfortunately, but I eventually checked it out on DVD and I remember it really ticking me off. Here's the thing though, Kangaroo Jack is possibly the most mismarketed movie of all time. And I don't mean mismarketed in the sense that they tried to change the tone or oversell the movie in the marketing. No, I mean Kangaroo Jack, the title, is the most misleading thing about the film. The titular Kangaroo Jack of the film isn't even in the actual film. It's just a dream sequence that they buffed up for marketing purposes to get kids into the cinema, and it worked. Kangaroo Jack debuted at number 1 and went on to eventually spawn a direct-to-video animated sequel. Yeah, that was a thing. Here's the thing, though. Kangaroo Jack was never meant to be Kangaroo Jack. In fact, there's a very specific reason why the film is the way it is. Kangaroo Jack was meant to be an R-rated comedy. That's right. This might sound preposterous to you, but remember, this is Hollywood we're talking about. If there's any concept that they think can be profitable and put to a specific demographic, they will change things. Like, you remember the rumors of that Scooby-Doo script? I think it was almost basically confirmed. Like, James Gunn originally wrote it to be more satirical and vulgar and R-rated. It's like that, but they actually made an R-rated comedy. Release the Kangaroo Jack cut! I'm telling you! Anyway, originally titled Down and Under, the movie was meant to be an R-rated comedy in the style of Midnight Run. And that's very evident when you actually watch the final product. There are many raunchy adjacent moments that have clearly been toned down in post-production. Charlie's love interest of the film has a topless sequence under a waterfall. There's a scene where the two main characters jump a shotgun sequence where the characters are fired at while a chase is happening, and one of the villains threatens Charlie's character with a knife and says, "I'm going to carve you up piece by piece." Damn, how does this movie even get a PG rating in the first place? Well, the MPA certainly works in mysterious ways. If this sounds vaguely familiar, take yourself back to 2002. Disney just released the movie Snow Dogs. Yes, we all look at it as the then bottom of the barrel for Cuba Gooding Jr.'s career, but it's easy to forget because of all of the jokes. But Snow Dogs was a significant hit. Produced on a budget of $33 million, it grossed over $115 million worldwide and sold extremely well in video. Blasted by critics, sure, but especially back then, parents didn't really care about reviews. Snow Dogs had a very specific marketing campaign. And one of the things that was noted about it back then, even by observers, was that it oversold the dream sequence in which Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character hallucinates and imagines that the dogs are talking. The dream sequence was all over the marketing, featuring the Jim Belushi voiced dog played to the tune of "Who Let the Dogs Out?" It was the most obvious thing in the world. Many box office observers believe that the success of this movie was based off this little marketing scheme from Disney. But here's the thing, I'd argue that the movie would have done well regardless. The movie was released in January when family-friendly films are barren, or at least the only family-friendly films that are in theaters or have been in theaters for weeks. And Disney, especially at the time, had a history of releasing movies around January/Martin Luther King weekend to varying degrees of success. Whatever the case, the movie was very popular. One thing that producer Jerry Bruckheimer never wanted to let potential success get away from his paws. Hatched a similar scheme in the immediate wake of Snow Dogg's success with a very similar idea, right down to the movie being released on Martin Luther King weekend. His R-rated mob comedy, Down and Under, tested extremely poorly, and to compensate, he had an idea. The film was made by some previous Bruckheimer collaborators, including David McNally, who previously helmed the Bruckheimer-produced Coyote Ugly, and co-written by Con Air screenwriter Scott Rosenberg. It's a family affair! Ooh! The movie featured a sequence involving the characters running into a talking kangaroo. That kangaroo tested extremely well, despite everything else being considered of very, very poor quality. So Bruckheimer got the bright idea to extend that sequence throughout some of the endos and raunchy jokes, even though some still exist in the film itself. Had the MPAA slap a PG rating on it, had the kangaroo perform Rapper's Delight in a dream sequence, and voila! Success! That's right, the entire marketing campaign was based around one scene that barely even lasted a minute. Bruckheimer was laughing to the bank. Here's the thing about Snow Dogs. It still features dogs in it, even though they're not talking. The title isn't misleading at all. Kangaroo Jack, on the other hand, barely has the kangaroo in it. It doesn't play into the plot at all. Sure, it exists, but it's less of a character and more of a nuisance. In fact, during the last half, also in Snow Dogs, dogs actually interact with the main character. That's not exactly the case in Kangaroo Jack. The kangaroo doesn't even contribute anything near the end of the film and just shows up to bounce around. It basically comes off like they shot the kangaroo in a separate room for the rest of the cast, and then just inserted him into whatever shot they needed him for. That's like if they made an Iron Man movie and had Tony Stark show up an hour in to perform a rendition of a heavy metal song, and then only appear to taunt the main villain at the end. I'm sure kids would love that.
You're a cute little guy, aren't you?
That was a literal sucker kick to the audience who paid money to see this movie. And as for the movie itself, Kangaroo Jack is one of those movies that conception just sounds so dumbfounded. As a PG-rated movie, its R-rated origins are extremely obvious. I mean, it's a comedy involving high-profile mobsters who carry guns around with them and threaten people. The character of Mr. Smith alone doesn't scream child-friendly at all to me. And the movie also should really answer the trivia question of Christopher Walken and Michael Shannon being in the same movie and actually sharing scenes together. It's actually kind of cool. I like that. You know what I find funny about this movie? The first time I saw it and it started, I actually assumed there was some prior film that involved the adventures of Charlie and Lewis as kids. And then I think that's a pretty apt description for Kangaroo Jack in general. It's one of those movies that exists in a higher plane of existence, of thought and rationale and thinking. In fact, there was one sequence in the film that I found very funny. It's when Charlie and Lewis stop, and they're looking around, and they suddenly get caught in a mirage. And Charlie suggests that they can just get out and start playing the cars and playing the music. And I think what I really found funny about that sequence was the randomness of it all. And I really wish the rest of the movie had that same kind of randomness. And you want to know, for all of my complaints about the lack of Kangaroo Jack and Kangaroo Jack, I gotta say, it did spawn an animated sequel with the kangaroo as a character now. But that's a discussion for another day. Hey, bye.